So far, 2025 has been a very volatile year. The markets are down, and we're all concerned about a potential recession and further volatility in the face of global geopolitical risks. If you've been planning to retire this year, what should you do? In this episode, we're going to talk about the things to consider to ensure your retirement remains secure.
It's easy to get lost on the way to retirement. Things like taxes, improper planning, and excessive market risk can all lead you astray from your goal of a successful and happy retirement. That's where Liz Whittaberry comes in. She's a holistic financial advisor and the founder of Best Path Advisors, and she can help guide you to a better financial path. This is Retire on Your Best Path with Liz Whittaberry.
Welcome once again to another edition of Retire on Your Best Path with Liz Whittaberry from Best Path Advisors. And we're going to talk about this topic, right? I mean, a down market is scary for people, especially as if you're nearing retirement. So we're going to go through some key things this week and let Liz break it down for us. And as always, if you got questions, need some help, make sure you're reaching out to a qualified professional like Liz. She's the founder and financial advisor at Best Path Advisors, and you can find her online at bestpathadvisors.com. That is bestpathadvisors.com. Liz, you have been busy, and then you add all this market stuff in there. So you have just been jumping from one foot to the next here recently, haven't you?
Has been busy. We just wrapped up tax season, and I'm wrapping up a course through the American College that I'm excited about. But of course, it does make it busy, and the market on top of that has kept planning a little busier than if it were all calm. So
Right. And we're going to break that down, right? Because I mean, it's
Yes.
we always talk about starting with a plan, but first, the market in the year of retirement is a big deal, right? So you're talking about sequence
Yes.
of risk return, right? So that's like
It is.
how you pull out and where you're pulling out. So retiring, that's scary for folks, and I get that, right? When the market's down, and we talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago, that it's staying the course and all that kind of stuff. But for folks that are starting to access that money, it's a little different scenario. Is that fair?
It is. There's been a lot of studies done that two retirees can both retire with the same amount of money, the same amount of income needs, the same amount of life expectancy. But if one retires in a down year, then their ending value is different than the one that retires in an up year. It just impacts it if there's no adjustments made.
Right.
And so retiring in a down year without making any adjustments, for some people that can be detrimental. We want to make sure that doesn't happen, that people know what they should think about.
Yeah. And that's why we say, right, start with the plan. So what are some of the bullet points there, to kind of backtrack and kind of get people refocused if they're feeling a little, uneasy?
For my clients who have a plan, your plan accounts for having down markets. Some people don't have a plan. And if you don't have a plan, then you need to get a plan. And we've talked before that you really need to get that at least 5 years before retirement, because that gives you the ability to have things in place so that when you get to the year of retirement, if it is a down year, you're already set up for that. And it's not a surprise or a shock to your plan.
Yeah, you can pivot a little bit, right? You've got some time to pivot and make adjustments.
Yeah. And so, what I say with my clients is it's not what I'm doing today as much as what I've done up until today to prepare for today. And that's what your plan does.
Right. That's a great
It helps
point,
you be
right?
prepared.
Yeah, because that's again, that's that proactiveness versus the reactiveness of, it's, still having a bad week or whatever, so let me do something. So, we want to have that strategy ahead of time. And so, who might be concerned about retiring this year, right? Who's in that window? And again, I think you kind of touched on that first piece. Obviously, people who don't have a strategy, even if they're not thinking about retiring in 2025, they still kind of start to overreact, right, to the market downturns. And it's like, well, if you're not planning on retiring this year, why are you panicking, right?
Right. But if they're retiring in anytime soon, then they need to get that plan. If your withdrawal rate has significantly increased, if somebody still had their portfolio still invested very aggressively, and now suddenly, because of what's happened in the market, instead of taking 3 to 4% a year from their accounts, they would need to be taking 6 or 7 or 8% a year from their accounts. And it's time to rethink some things before you retire and start taking that much, just to make sure that you have the longevity in your plan, that security. And that, again, anybody that didn't plan and reallocate starting 5 years ago to be in a place where they have some stability as they approach retirement, that's the person that should have some concern about retiring, or at least re-look at everything before pulling that trigger.
Well, that's a great point, because if you did have this 5-year strategy, you had some things in place ahead of time, and your advisor has already been kind of forward looking. And granted, we didn't know exactly how things were going to shake out, but you when you see the headlines that the S&P year to date's down 11% or whatever the number is at this particular moment. You panic to that, but you may not be down that 11%, right? As we talked about 2 weeks ago, you may only be down 2, or 3, depending on how your plan was strategized. So you can't control the markets or the economy, but you can control those levers and those various different things. So for someone concerned about retiring, thinking of those levers, what can we do? What are some things to think about?
One of the easiest things, if you like your work, it's not stressing you out, it's not leading you to an early grave, it's an easy lever to just work another year or two.
Right.
And we've talked in the past, people are surprised that working another year adds 2 more years to the longevity of the portfolio, because that's 1 year you have income coming in. Mm-hmm. It's also a year you're not drawing down.
So
right. It's actually like 2 more years in the plan. So if you work 2 more years, then you actually have added 4 more years. But working that extra time, if your portfolio has gotten really hit, then that gives you some time for that to recover.
And I guess a triple whammy in a way, to the positive, right? Because you're also not pulling money from these down accounts like we were just talking about. So you could kind of look at it 3 ways if you want to.
And it gives you something to do. If you've already retired or you still want to retire, you really don't want to work at that job anymore, you can consult. You can get a part-time job. Those are some easy things to keep you from needing to use any of the retirement accounts. Mm-hmm. You can also start Social Security earlier to minimize the drain on your accounts.
True. Okay.
And relook at that. When were you going to start it? Should you go ahead and start it? Does that make sense? You shouldn't just do it without looking at the plan. But if the plan says, yes, this would be a good thing to do, in your situation, start the Social Security now. Mm. You can reduce spending, because that reduces the drain on the accounts. And when I'm working with my clients, we're implementing guardrails, which means we're watching to make sure that our spending doesn't become too big a percentage of the portfolio as we go through some of these periods of time. Maybe we're postponing some bigger expenses or adjusting spending just a little bit in those times where it's a little more volatile.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And you think about how we react to stuff. Obviously, no one's happy about, when we see things like what we're going through right this minute. But we did have a down market for a bit in 22 as well, right? There was the choppiness there. You can go back to, I think it was 18. It was a little bit that way. Then, of course, you can, you could go all the way back if you want to the last prolonged downturn. And you've been doing this a long time. Have you seen this play out in real life for folks where, retiring in that down market? Because, again, we've been pretty blessed with the markets overall for the last, 16 years, 15 years overall, right? So have you seen that where someone's, kind of they were planning on it and the down markets happen and they're kind of, what do we do?
I absolutely have. In fact, I just got a phone call a few weeks ago. One of my clients is planning to retire this year. We've been planning for that for the last 3 or 4 years. And she just wanted to check in because the markets are very volatile. Sure. And so she said, I just really need to check in with you. So we reviewed the bucket plan. She's got 5 years of cash flow in her short-term bucket. And I said, you can absolutely move forward like we've planned, which I could hear the relief in her voice that it's all going to be fine. I can still retire. I really want to get away from work and do, the things that we planned, the travel and the things that we planned, while we still have the health to do that. But thinking way back, like you said, way back to 2008, okay, that one was a really big downturn.
And a prolonged one,
Well, I had a client that I had started working with probably a few years before that. And in 2007, we had a meeting and we adjusted the portfolio. I made some recommendations. She said, do you really think I should, be this conservative or make these changes? I don't want to miss out on, another year of really good growth. Everything's been going up so well. And so I walked through all the reasons that we need to have the plan, stick to the plan, and that it would carry her through whatever might happen.
Right.
Well, then 2008 happened.
Right. September, right?
September of 2008, the market drops. She was going to retire in December of 2008.
Ooh,
She
okay.
still retired.
Oh, nice.
She felt very comfortable retiring. Her portfolio wasn't, obliterated. We had things lined up as they needed to be. And we did all the right things. We turned on Social Security. We looked at her spending. We minimized taxes. We postponed a new car for another couple of years just to let the portfolio come back before having a big expense. But now it's more than 16 years later, and her retirement is still very secure.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
And she's still very, very happy about that. She told me at the time that she retired that she had coworkers that were going to work a few more years because they didn't have a plan, and they were going to retire at the same time in the same year, and they did not.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, it was 50% downturn in some of those, types of indices at that time period, right? So with the housing crash, right, with the housing recession issues and all that stuff. So if you were weighted wrong, if you were in the, just your allocations, you could have been down quite a bit. Hopefully you weren't, someone wasn't losing 50%, but they could have, right? They certainly with the way they had things set up. And so, and then you think about the run that she went through, right? So you had the plan, she was able to retire. And then, 2009, the market starts going on a tear, right? So she was able to kind of, those accounts kind of regrow, as you mentioned. And she did she get her new car that she had postponed?
Did. Oh yeah. They've done so many things over the years.
Nice.
And have been very happy with that. And have not had the stress of worrying about, well, can we pay for this, or can we go on this trip, or can we buy this RV, or can we, do this for our kids or grandkids. They've been able to do the things that they wanted to do. And, looking back today, are still very pleased with where they're at, how secure their plan is. All of their expenses are being covered. They still have, the net worth that they had before. So all of that is very, very good. And it's because of having a plan and having things structured to carry you through those volatile times. That's what the plan is for. You prepare ahead of time as opposed to reacting after the fact.
Yeah, we, so my brother and I just picked up this pergola to swap. The one that we have is falling apart, so I was going to take it down. So I bought one of these kits, right, at one of these places. You can put these cool-looking little pergolas together, and there's a ton of pieces to it. Well, if I didn't have the instructions, I'd be winging it, right? And it wouldn't come out very well. And it's the same thing, right? We're talking about the same exact thing. So what advice do you have? I mean, obviously, get a plan. That's obviously the main piece. But what other pieces of advice do you have?
Well, given that we're in a down market, the thing that I would like to say is that everybody needs to revisit their tax plan. It could be because we're in a down market, it's a really good time to do some Roth conversions, do that early in the year. You get more shares of whatever stock you're transferring from your IRA to your Roth IRA, more shares transferred over at the same conversion amount. And then when it rebounds, you've got the rebound in the Roth account as opposed to in your traditional IRA.
It's a lower tax bill.
That's lower tax bill.
Yep.
The other thing is when you're revisiting that, you might need to skip that Roth conversion this year so that you don't have the extra tax. You minimize the drawdown, you preserve capital. It really depends on your situation. And so you need to have that conversation with your advisor so that you can make the best of your situation, the best of what's going on right now.
That's a great point, right? So there's that point counterpoint. Every situation is going to be a little bit different. So, just making sure that you're talking with your financial professional to see, what kind of things you can do. We talked about that on the last podcast as well. What are some of the silver lining things we need to look for when we are experiencing times like these? And the first thing, obviously, is always sitting down and having a conversation with qualified pros so that you can retire on your best path. Reach out to Liz and have a chat if you're not already working with her. BestPathAdvisors.com. That's BestPathAdvisors.com, where you can find her online there. Lots of good tools, tips, and resources. You can check on the good stuff and also check out our YouTube page and subscribe to that. There's a lot of good things there. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. And, of course, get yourself some time onto the calendar. Anything else, Liz, before we go?
I just want to tell everybody to remember that these times pass and your plan will carry you through.
Yeah. What is it? What is that saying?
Yeah.
This too shall pass.
This too shall pass.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, again, if you got questions, folks, reach out to Liz as always. She's the founder and financial advisor at Best Path Advisors. And we'll see you next time here on the podcast, Retire on Your Best Path.
The preceding program is sponsored by Best Path Advisors, which is solely responsible for its content. Securities offered through J.W. Cole Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through J.W. Cole Advisors. Best Path Advisors, J.W. Cole Financial, and J.W. Cole Advisors are unaffiliated entities. The opinions expressed by Liz Whitberry should not be construed as specific tax, legal, or investment advice, nor as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Neither J.W. Cole Financial nor its representatives provide legal, tax, or accounting advice. Persons who provide such advice do so in a capacity other than as a registered representative of J.W. Cole. Investing is subject to risks, including the loss of principal. Due to volatility within the markets mentioned, opinions are subject to change without notice. Information is based on sources believed to be reliable, however, their accuracy or completeness cannot be guaranteed.